getting to the point.
I was a folk singer in the early 60s, and on the road in 66, I accidentally picked up a used camera in a second-hand store and started photographing all my friends in Laurel Canyon. And a lot of those friends were David Crosby, Mama Cass, Stephen Stills, Joni Mitchell, a lot of the singer-songwriter people that lived in Laurel Canyon. Yeah, over the years, I've taken so many pictures of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, both individually and together. So I'd never really assembled them all before. And gosh, there were so many pictures of them because all, in the 55 years I've been photographing, I've probably photographed them every year at some point or many times. Yeah, it was fun to assemble all these years of photos together and see what they looked like as a whole group, and it was pretty amazing to see.
Our house is a very, very, very fine house.
Well, I could say, the reason I was able to photograph their lives so well is, I think, not so much that I'm a photographer, but that I'm a musician. Because it's one thing to be a photographer and kind of get in the way and interrupt, what they're doing, but to be a musician is to be in the club with them and to be able to, musicians like to hang out. And by golly, I know how to do that very well. And so I could just hang out very quietly and take little candid shots when they didn't even know I was doing it. And that was the only way it would be possible to photograph all their lives like this, was not so much being a photographer, but more being a musician photographer, I think. I mean, I had met all these guys in their previous bands long before anybody knew there was going to be a Crosby, Stills, Nash, and or Young. I mean, I photographed the Byrds, I photographed the Buffalo Springfield, I photographed the Hollies, and nobody had any idea that those three guys would be singing together one day, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, let alone adding Young to it. So it was really, really a supergroup, really made up of some of the really great singer-songwriters. I mean, all of these guys wrote great songs, had great voices, but the harmony that they had together was what was so special. Their voices they tell the story of how the first day they all three sang a song together. They couldn't believe how beautiful the sound was.
And there's a rose in the fisted glove.
During the time when I was first photographing them, which was the late 60s, early 70s, we all lived up in Laurel Canyon, so we were all friends up there. And Joni Mitchell in particular lived on the same street I lived on, and Jackson Browne was around, Bonnie Raitt was around, so many, musicians. I mean, we were all musicians living up in Laurel Canyon, really, because Laurel Canyon was a place 5 minutes away from Hollywood, up in the hills, and they were all curvy hillside streets. So there were no lawns, there were no sidewalks, so families couldn't live up there because there was no place for the kids to ride their bicycles or to push them in a baby carriage. It was all curvy hills. So therefore, it was only actors, single actors, and single musicians who lived up there. So it was, a hillside community of all these talented people. So, our neighbors were all those people. I mean, Dan Fogelberg lived across the street from me, Mickey Dolenz lived down the street, Mark Vaughn from the Turtles, Jackson lived there, Crosby lived there, Neil Young lived there, Joni Mitchell lived there, and we'd all meet every night at the Troubadour, which was at the club that everybody went to almost every night if you were in town. So there's a lot of the comments in this book are from a lot of our friends who lived up in Laurel Canyon.
Tearing yourself away from me now.
I probably first heard Crosby, Stills, Nash singing in the studio, Wally Heider's studio, when they were recording the first album. I believe Marrakesh Express, which was a Graham Nash song. that the Hollies wouldn't record. And I remember taking photos of them in the studio. When they first got together, they would play all at people's houses, and I would hear about it, but I just never happened to be there. You know, whenever they were together at a party, they'd stand in the corner and sing Blackbird. But I never happened to be there for any of those parties. So, yeah, the first time I saw them sing together was in the recording studio. Neil Young had played in the Buffalo Springfield with Stephen Stills years before. CSN did their first album, and then they thought they needed a little more, a little something, a little more oomph in the music. So they thought they'd get their old friend Neil Young to add sort of the rock and roll element to it. I mean, they were a beautiful three-part harmony. It was mostly vocal and Stephen's guitar. But to go on the road and make it a little more sort of rock and roll, they needed another element, and Neil Young became that element. Graham had seen this old rundown house somewhere on a little side street in Hollywood, and we found it, pulled up, and there was a couch, a beautiful old used couch, sitting right outside this little bungalow, and they all jumped on the couch, and the couch was rectangular, and I have a framing Jones. I like to frame, and so this couch was perfect. It fit the frame perfectly. So I was right up close, getting the perfect shot. And Gary Burton said one of the things he always said to me, which was, back up, get the whole house. And so I had to back up across the street with the telephoto lens and get the entire house. We weren't taking an album cover, but I think Gary, in his mind, thought, wow, this would be great, because when he actually picked that photo for the cover, then we got the film developed, and we had a slideshow to look at the pictures. And everybody said, wow, that picture on the couch would be a great album cover, but since you took that picture 2 or 3 days ago, we've named ourselves Crosby, Stills, Nash. We hadn't decided on the order of the names, and in your picture, it's Nash, Stills, and Crosby. So that'll be confusing. And they were talking about, well, we could flip the photo over, but then Stephen will be playing left-handed, so that'll be weird. And then I remember just saying, let's just go back. We'll go back to the house, jump on the couch in the right order, bing, bing, bing. It'll take a minute. And, so we did. We piled in the old Ford station wagon and drove back, and there was no house. The house was gone. It was just a bulldozer had just plowed it over in the back of the lot. It became a parking lot. Just about the time Joni Mitchell wrote that song, Paved Paradise, put up a parking lot. And that is exactly what happened in this case. So they had to use it with, it said Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but it was Nash, Stills, and Crosby in the photo.
Love the one you're with. Don't be angry. Don't be sad.
The music of our lives is something that we all live with. When Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, both together and separately, are a big part of the soundtrack of our lives, of my life for sure. And I think many people out there grew up with this music, and so we know it so well. It's been a part of our lives, year after year. So it's really great to see the whole development of it in chronological order. I've never really seen that before. This book has 55 years of photos that I've taken of these guys, plus quotes and interviews from many of their friends and colleagues. And it also there's an element of my journal entries in there. All along I've kept a journal, mainly just to remember what day I took what picture. But there were little descriptions of things there on the road with them, and we've put those throughout the book.